How you doing today, Carmen?
I'm doing great, thank you. I've been like super busy with all my canning and preserving and all that jazz that happens this time of year. So yeah, it's
So
awesome.
good. I'm actually quite sad. I did a bunch of canning with Michelle and her mom last summer. We canned peaches,
Oh yeah.
and I just found a jar in the fridge that I had opened like a month ago and forgotten about, and it got moldy.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was
What a
really, it was
shame.
such a shame. It's like the best food ever is food that you've preserved yourself, you
Without
know?
a doubt. And especially if you've grown it yourself as well, you know that you've packed all those beautiful nutrients in there and it's just the best
Yes.
on the planet, huh? So good.
So building off of that, we're going to have a conversation today about permaculture in general. And you've been practicing permaculture for a long time. You've been gardening for a long time. You know, in some way, your connection to nature, the natural world, has been a big part of how you've spent your life energy. And I'm really curious to know what you feel matters most to you about permaculture? What are the most important elements about permaculture that have made it such an integral part of your life over the years?
Yeah, I think what resonates the most with me about permaculture, and it probably does for a lot of other people as well, whether they can identify it or not, is that it's that whole systems approach. It's that holistic approach that that really that that really resonates, that makes us feel like we're part of something. There's those complex matrices of connectivity in all of the systems that we can design within, with the permaculture lens, that allows us to meet the needs within our system, right? To meet our own needs within the context of the system, and also, leveraging all of that essential diversity. And so, for me, it's really about that connect those connectivities,
Hmm.
how the needs and the yields are all met from within. Yield is a need for something else, and so there's that part, that holistic context, I think, for me,
Hmm.
is the big bomb, because it encapsulates so many, well, basically all of the permaculture principles, but it's really a way of living, and that to me just makes so much sense to me. And that's what for me matters most when I think about permaculture, and when I'm teaching about ecosystem services and dynamics. That's the big player right there. Is how many connections can we make, and why is that important? And I can see that in my daily life, focusing on those kinds of things within the permaculture context, like knowing the knowingness that I am a part of something bigger, and that I am an important player in that game. That to me is really great.
Love,
It's just
I love
awesome.
that answer. Like I had a conversation with Lindsay Brandon yesterday, and it's funny because it kind of started off in the exact same way, like permaculture and connectivity. Permaculture offers this holistic systems design way of thinking that other approaches don't offer. We're
Right.
having a conversation about how we're trained to think so linearly,
Really,
and our supply chains are very linear. It's like here's
without
the
a doubt.
inception, here's the start, and here's the end. In school, you're slowly being funneled into one school of thought, and we really miss out on so much opportunity by being able to think in different systems, and like you said, to connect different elements, like, oh, there's a need here, is there another yield within the system that we can apply? And I mean,
Right.
this is kind of philosophical, this conversation. Like, if you don't know what permaculture is,
Yes, if you
it's
don't know
hard
what
to.
permaculture is, it totally could feel that way. But when you really start paying attention, that's when you see the wisdom of that kind of and
Mhm.
that's the way the world functions. And so it's interesting, like natural world functions. And so it's interesting to me that you can have these complex, yet actually very simple, connected systems within a home landscape, let's say, and then every landscape, every home, or property has, or social structure has, that hyper local matrix of connectivity, and then
Yeah.
it expands exponentially out from there. But each each matrix, seemingly, because they're all connected, has the ability to function as a whole, and so that's what's really neat, and that just continues to grow. So it's just like this really that's why I say these stacked matrices of connection that
Yeah.
just create this web of this jiggly web, in a way that has so much elasticity and anti-fragility, and that to me is magic right there.
Wow.
I love
It truly is. It's been really interesting to learn about the history of permaculture as having originally emerged in response to industrial agriculture, trying to imagine a more permanent agriculture, permaculture,
right.
and how it's really gone beyond just the agriculture now to home property design, as well as lifestyle design. And you mentioned social
Absolutely.
structures. A lot of people will take permaculture principles and use them to inform their businesses or community groups. It really is becoming, I don't I don't want to use the word religion for it, because I don't think it's quite
Oh,
close to a religion, but is it an ideology? Is it just a life philosophy? What
I
is it
think it's
becoming?
I think it's just this really intuitive model, and I think that's why people, once they study permaculture a little bit and they start to put it into practice, especially, um, they recognize it. They recognize the wisdom of a holistic system, because we are we live within that system. We do, and we always think that we're separate from it, and so it's really easy to when you're in it, you recognize it. Let me just put it that way.
Hmm.
And so I think it's this really beautiful model that can be applied to, and it's not a template. It's not something that
Yeah,
we
definitely not
don't
a
use
template.
permaculture as a set of templates. We use it as a yeah, I
A
suppose some
design, I guess
people.
it is a design science. I mean, you do a permaculture design certificate, you take a permaculture design course.
Right. However, there's still just a ton. When we look at holistic systems, there's the seen stuff, and then there's the unseen stuff, right? And so it's like I always say, when we're designing food forests and that sort of thing, we do a ton of designs in that field, and as part of larger property designs. But in designing a forest garden or a food forest, we can only work with what we know, or suspect is happening in natural systems. And I've studied natural ecosystem dynamics most of my life, and it was part of my career for a long time. And you can approach it from a very scientific perspective. This is what's going on here. We always find these plants together, or we look at browse, or ecosystem different ecosystem habitats, and you do look for patterns. But you can look at it from so many different levels, and that no matter how much you know or think you know about how an ecosystem functions, there's this whole hidden energetic matrix. And we now understand that there's a lot of chemical interactions. Look at mycorrhizae. There's all of this quote unquote magic going on behind the scenes that we human beings have no idea is going on. And
Totally.
so that's why I say that there's this seen aspect. There's what we think we know, and then there's what we absolutely don't know. And that's the big joy, and the exciting mystery of it all, is that we have the opportunity, simply by reinserting ourselves back into that holistic dynamic, of welcoming the opportunity to continue to learn and evolve our understanding of these systems. And it's okay if we don't understand everything too. So there is
Yeah.
that aspect.
I
So
love how you put that, because permaculture for me, it really did give me an avenue, a framework, a model to re-engage myself with the natural world in a way that felt meaningful as well as productive. And I think about how people my age, mid 20s, early 20s, they're not really given unless you want to kind of just go for a walk, or you're an outdoors person, you like to go outside for activities and stuff. We're not given any models or ways to engage with the landscape in like a spiritual way, like indigenous peoples have been doing with the land for thousands of years, and like people who live outside of cities might feel more intuitively than people who have always
Right,
grown up in a city do. um, but something that's really interesting that we're seeing is, after our permaculture design courses, we're asking people, how have things changed for you? And people are more observant of the world around them.
right.
They notice nature more than they did before. And I think that's a really important thing. It's a really fundamental quality in our humanness. We are nature working, like you
Absolutely.
guys say in the permaculture design course. And we have this
Yeah,
idea that we are outside of nature. We have transcended nature. We're above it. It's only there to support human needs. But
right. Yes.
it's just so not the case.
And I think, that's one of the, one of the challenges, and, we'll probably address this later on in our conversation, but it is really that in so doing, in removing ourselves from that dynamic, we've lost the opportunity for the experiential component of what it is to feel connected in that way. And it honestly, because holistic context, whether we acknowledge it or not, is at play all the time. We it applies just as easily to social systems, or business systems, family dynamics, as it does to natural systems. But a lot of people just haven't created the opportunity. Nature is a fantastic teacher for all of us, and when we immerse ourselves in that environment a little bit more, and challenge ourselves to be fantastic observers, and without judgment, without biases, and just like another element in the natural system would, when we challenge ourselves to do that, when we invite ourselves back into that space, I think what we really gain out of that is that experiential aspect, where I get it. I do feel a part of this now, or I love how balanced and grounded I feel when I'm walking on a forest path. And it's about really crafting and nurturing that respectful relationship. And so when we do that, we feel connected to it.
Do you feel like there are any other narratives or models, we've been using the term with permaculture, out there that offer something akin to permaculture? Or what is it, that permaculture is offering that other narratives don't?
I think permaculture really has organized a lot of these things into one place,
Right.
because there's nothing, there's nothing groundbreakingly new or novel about
Yeah.
the concepts of permaculture. If you look at the permaculture principles, you can see that, one by one, there's nothing. That's why it makes so much sense to people. When they take the PDC, they say,
Yeah.
I totally get it, because it makes so much sense. And how come I didn't think about it this way before? So I think it's a way of assembling, really common sense and practical ways of seeing and knowing, uh, into a what would you call it, like a format, that can then be put into practice. So as far as offering something completely different, I think it's really about that assemblage,
Yeah.
and about creating what we're doing when we're teaching the PDC is we're bringing all of these things together in a way that is organized and is impactful enough to start shifting the lens from a linear way of thinking to that
Mm.
holistic context. And it's like we're helping to shine a beam of light into somebody and open them up a bit enough, so
Yeah.
that they can recognize the the inherent, I hate to use the word truths, but the inherent value of of holistic ways of thinking and doing. And that's not something that we are taught. And that's part of the big challenge, is that we're not nurtured along those lines from a young age, because we were all really born into, these systems that are, as we talked about earlier, very linear. So in a way, when we get these, sometimes young adults, sometimes we have students in the PDC, and other times it's, people who are seniors who are coming to the PDC. And for many of them, it's like, wow, this is like totally a new way of thinking. So that's a beautiful thing, is there's that opening up of a person. And I think that's part of the role. If you've done your job well as a PDC teacher, that's the result you hope for, is that people are going to be, opening up a little bit and looking at the world from a different, with a different set of glasses on. And that's an indicator of success.
I would love to spend just like an hour or 2 hours talking about all the ways that humanity would benefit from educating our children about permaculture. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot would change. Permaculture just, it allows you to see opportunities where there wasn't opportunities before. And I think it's so valuable to instill that kind of thinking in a child that is
Absolutely.
just full of ideas. Like, they aren't inhibited by all the limiting beliefs and kind of realistic logical thinking that we get as adults, where it's like, oh, it's it's not possible, we don't have enough money, the systems are against us, like these institutions.
Right.
But a kid isn't thinking
Yeah.
about any of those things. He's just like full creative mode all
Oh,
the
listen,
time.
I remember when I was a kid, and in fact, I uh, I'm a singer-songwriter as well. And but I just wrote this new song, and one of the lines in it is basically, I remember a time when I was young, I didn't think I belonged to anyone. I was just, a child of the forest running wild.
Right.
And and that was, I think that children, you know, given the space to be creative and to like rewild the child, that's going to be something that's going to be very important for us with our children moving forward, is allowing them to rewild a little bit. And
Mm.
I had that opportunity when I was very young, and so we're born into, like, if we have a lot of it, honestly, sorry to shift gears here, but a lot of it, I
That's
think,
okay.
the attitude of the parents of the time. I didn't have any helicopter parents, let me tell you.
Right.
We were greatly loved and respected, but we had a lot of freedom. And nowadays there's just so much restrictions on the way kids spend their time.
Yeah.
And they're really like almost over parented. And so there's never a chance for the child to explore that freedom of being that is so essential in order to maintain or build that holistic way of thinking, because we're born into this world with that capability, because that's the world we belong to.
I know.
And it's trained out of us,
It's
basically.
just it's like designed for control. And I was shocked to learn a few years ago that our schools were architecturally designed by the same people who design prisons. um,
Yeah.
and so when you think about that and all the trickle down effects, like how we engage with our built environment, and how it makes us feel being in different spaces. Like, you can feel the difference when you're in a square box room with no light versus being
Yeah.
outside in nature, just like the spaciousness, the
Right.
capacity you have. um,
Yeah.
and my roommate is in the Bachelor of Education program at the University of Calgary, and it's been really refreshing, actually, to learn about some of the things that he's being taught at the school around the design of education, and how he's being encouraged to provide different approaches to assignments for students. So, maybe not everybody wants to write 100-word essay. Maybe some kids are going to be better doing a speech or making a little video, and just allowing for more, I guess, just getting out of that linear mindset in the school environment.
Yes.
So we're starting to see that more. Like, people are wanting some change, and so it's happening. But then, let's go a step further, and let's get them outside of these these square box rooms with limited light where they're
Yeah.
forced to just sit behind
Oh man,
desks and chairs all day long. Like, no
I
wonder we have
totally
such
get
high
that.
rates of ADHD. They just want to
Oh,
run around and play and be kids.
yeah, and my second to youngest daughter, she was really challenged in school because incredibly brilliant as a very young child, but she was a square peg they were trying to, or a round peg trying to fit into a square hole, um, and it was an ongoing conversation we had with the teachers around there must be multiple ways for her to demonstrate her knowledge or her understanding of a subject matter, right? And it was just really, really challenging. Now, we're looking at I'm so happy to hear that we're starting to really embrace this more holistic context that every human being is unique unto themselves, and how do we allow them to demonstrate their understanding or their genius in their own way, and not try to funnel people into these uncomfortable ways of thinking. It's like giving an orthotic with a big arch to somebody with flat feet.
Yeah,
I
that's good. I
You
like
can't
that.
do that. I know I'm somewhat flat-footed, so I understand how painful that is. And it affects your whole life because it's your foundation. So it's a good analogy in a way. So yeah, interesting
So
stuff.
I have a good follow-up question for that. We both see the benefits that permaculture has to offer, but what do you feel are some of the biggest challenges or barriers to the more widespread adoption of permaculture?
I think honestly, it's sort of the practical, how can I put this? I think it's the practical examples of permaculture that are still few and far between. And so, we have a lot of people go through the PDC every year. And so, we used to have this challenge of, what can you do for $10 in 10 hours or whatever, something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, 10, 10, 100 or whatever.
Oh
And
yeah, the
do you remember
10
that? And it was a
yeah.
challenge to the students to apply something right away. And I think, consider that 80% of all Canadians live in urban environments, live in
Mm,
cities or urban environments. I mean, we've got a big country, right? So we have, we don't have the huge population base that some other places do. But 80% of Canadians actually live in urban environments. So what that means is that if we want to really support the promotion of permaculture as a way of looking at the world and interacting with our world, then having urban examples is what I'm trying to say. I think is
yeah.
really key, because you can study all you want um, about permaculture, and you can look at all the principles and everything, but until you're applying them in your front or backyard, and until other people have the opportunity to experience what it's like to be in those systems, they're never going to get it, and it's never going to feel authentic to them.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've been to our property a million times. I mean, we've already had we do like eco yard tours every year. We open it up for the community for free. For anybody who wants to come, we put a limit on it because our property is only so big, but we'll get over 200 people through our property every year. And a big reason that we do that is we want people to see what permaculture not only looks like, but what it feels like.
Yes.
And so we feel that by doing that, we're having an impact on people's ability to sort of reimagine what permaculture is, and what is this about. And we point out the connections, and they see the incredible diversity of plant species and insect species and bird species, and it's wonderful because they get it.
Yeah.
So and we've really strived to make our system beautiful, a place that people intuitively feel. I can't tell you how many times we've had people come in here and their jaws just drop. And it's not because necessarily of what it looks like, although it is beautiful, but it's what it feels like. They feel this sense of abundance at a time when, I mean, look around the world. We have big attitude diseases right now in our world, and there's a lot of people that are in a position of feeling lack, that the never enoughness. right? It's never
I think
enough.
a lot of us are
It's going to
feeling
be
that.
more. And so when is it enough? And what is it that we're trying to feed inside of ourselves? What's that hunger that needs satisfying? And I think that's what people feel when they come to a permaculture property that is abundant and beautiful and nurturing. They say, wow, I feel full. I feel nurtured. I feel like I belong, and I want this. I want this. That's something that people say all the time to me. I want this. And I love that. That to me is worth, all the work we've put into our property, up front. Now we don't do a ton. We mostly just enjoy it, which is great. But yeah, that's
Really
very sad.
appreciate you touching on that inner feeling of fullness, that I think people are looking for. And you also mentioned how, people are, I can't remember the exact words you use, but just like looking for things to make them feel more whole. It's that
Right.
idea of kind of being caught in the rat race, or
Yeah.
chasing more and more and more. But everything you could ever want is right here around you. And I think
Right.
permaculture really exemplifies that, because it's just, well, at least in I come from a background of positive psychology, so I've studied how people find meaning in life, what
Yeah.
brings them, that sense of fullness, that sense of completeness beyond just happiness. Um,
Sure.
but it's just like that enduring sense of living a purposeful life. And to me, permaculture really feels like it provides it. Like, it gives you purpose, and that you have these living things around you that you are the steward of.
Right.
All the plants and the trees, annuals, perennials. It's a system that makes sense, like you said. Like, when you see it, it
Yeah.
just feels right. And then it's also significant in the way that you're making a tangible impact on the planet. You're leaving things better than they were before.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. And I mean, this, right now we've got this system where there's this huge skew in what value is, right? So, if we look at what permaculture offers us, that mainstream systems do not. I mean, I think it's just really a way forward. We can, we can see this way forward, and we can start to regain sovereignty over some of our own needs, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But over and above that, it's kind of a reclamation of what does true quality of life really mean to me. And when I look at, my interactions with my landscape and my natural system, I feel a great sense of community on my own property, because I'm in relationship. It's
Yes.
not really
Yeah, good way of
stewarding.
putting it.
It's that I'm in actual relationship with all the elements on my system, my soil,
Yeah.
my soil microbes, my plants, this all the entire system is something that I am in relationship with. And so what that does for me is it heals. I think what permaculture can offer that mainstream narratives don't is that, permaculture can really heal what I like to call the great disconnect. And again, we talked about that briefly about, placing ourselves outside of the dynamic of the world in which we live. And that reconnection, with one another in our communities that permaculture can offer us, but with our landscape and the elements within the landscape. There's something about placing ourselves mindfully back into that equation and acknowledging that connectivity that is very healing for us. And so there's that. And I see a lot of young people in our courses, Ben, that really feel, I mean, I think a big part of the reason they're attracted to permaculture because they suspect that that's possible for them to heal that disconnect, because they've had it with the current narrative, and they just say, look, this is meaningless to me.
That's exactly how I felt coming into the
Yeah. And when
permaculture
you
course.
come in and you just feel, I remember one time, I probably told you this story once, or I might have mentioned it on the PDC, but I was teaching, it was one of the last live in-person PDCs that Rob and I taught before the pandemic. And it was really strange because we had to rent this. It was actually the pandemic was just starting. So we had the opportunity to rent a community hall, and it was one of the few places that would, and we had to place, 30 students like far apart in this massive gymnasium in order to be allowed to teach. So we did that. And I remember on one of the days, there was a young woman sitting outside. It was lunchtime, and basically she was talking to her cohorts, and I happened to walk by, and I heard her say, I don't even feel I have a right to be alive. You know, we're screwing up the planet so severe. I don't even feel I deserve to live. And that just slayed me. And I realized the incredible pain that a lot of young people are carrying around
There's a
inside
lot
of them.
of guilt being
Guilt.
espoused.
Yeah. And I think the beautiful thing is that, you know, after the PDC, everyone feels hopeful.
Yeah.
And you know, when we
And
talk about,
empowered as well.
and empowered and deserving of being an element in the design, right?
Yeah.
And that to me, that healing, that big disconnect is a big part, I think, of what permaculture offers, and that sense of value, redefining what true value is.
Mm.
That's a big deal, and that's like a very healing element for folks. And yeah,
I think that's I said I would kind of keep this interview to about 30 minutes. So I think that's the perfect place to end. Just the potential for permaculture to offer that healing, you know, both to individuals and the planet, our systems, our communities. If you want to learn more about permaculture, we at Verge Permaculture offer permaculture design courses, and we also have a permaculture design conference coming up September 3rd to 25th. Carmen here is going to be one of our speakers. She's also the lead instructor for that permaculture design course. She also offers a ton of additional amazing courses on her own website through her business, Urban Farm School. So you're definitely gonna want to go check that out. All of the information is going to be in the links below this YouTube video. Carmen, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
my pleasure. It's always fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll see you soon. And for everybody listening, we hope to see you at the conference. Bye for now.
Take care, folks. Bye.